Woo-wee! Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about some Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance. So as many of you guys know, this game is getting a ton of negative hype, or whatever you want to call it, on the internet now via YouTube reviews, Steam reviews, etc. But I'm here to give you guys my personal thoughts and opinions. Now, some of this negative hype I do believe is valid, and I'm going to talk about that, but there's other things that I want to talk about that people might not have mentioned. I really just want to give you guys my honest opinions without this just seeming like I'm jumping on the negative hype train that we do create on the internet for a lot of games. It can be exciting to get negative about a game. I know it from personal experience. When I was younger, I used to jump on those negative hype trains at times. It's kind of exciting to trash a game, seriously, but I'm no longer like that, and I want to give you guys my honest opinions. So when I review games, I like to take into account the price that's being charged for the game and also the type of player that the game is seemingly designed for. So stick around for my final thoughts at the end to see if Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance is a game for you. So as some of you guys can probably already tell, this video is a bit more lax than my typical videos. Honestly, I just don't really want to spend that much time working on a review today. I just want to talk about a few points that I laid out on a paper in front of me so you guys can hear my thoughts right off the top of my head in a semi-organized manner. So I'm about 35 hours into D&D Dark Alliance. I've completed all of the levels with Drizzt, mostly solo, but also played a bit of co-op at the lower levels with Bruenor, Wulfgar, and Catti-brie. I've also earned about 6 or 7 pieces of legendary gear, which is the highest level of rarity gear that you can get in the game, and I've also leveled that gear to its max. So I do have some experience with this game, and I'm ready to talk about it in as honest of a way as I possibly can. We're going to start off with one of the biggest negatives of the game, and that is the AI. So when you're playing Dark Alliance, you might notice that sometimes upwards to 50% of the enemies are kind of living in La La Land. It was kind of like I was playing against a bunch of goblins with dementia, but those goblins were also bodybuilders that could one-shot you. It was kind of a weird combination. Overall, the AI was an unfinished part of this game, in my opinion. I'm not sure if it was intentional for balancing issues or what they were thinking, but even if it was balancing issues, that means that the AI is unfinished, and this is of course not acceptable for a game's launch. There's no way that tuque games didn't play this game themselves, notice this stuff, and laugh a little while at the studio. For example, the goblins that came out when I was fighting the end boss of the game, literally the final fight of the game. These goblins looked more confused than I was when I was trying to survive the boss's janky, unpredictable movements. When the AI was acting appropriately, the game actually wasn't too bad, but they rarely were acting appropriately, even the ones that were actively engaged with the players. They oftentimes would run up into your face and then not do anything for possibly 5 seconds or more, and then randomly take a swing at you. And this really kind of killed the pacing of the game and a bit of the immersion. I understand that stamina drain is a common complaint for this game so far, and I do understand where a lot of players are coming from. And when you're playing some of the characters in this game, you want to parry enemies to get some of your stamina back. I do think this is a really cool idea if implemented correctly in the game, but the problem is when you're trying to get off that parry, the enemy's not even swinging at you. So you're trying to gain stamina back through quick combat, but the enemy just stands in your face for 5 seconds, then you finally move to a different enemy, and that enemy hits you in the back. So it was really weird in that regards, and the stamina system overall, I think, could have been good if it was implemented correctly. I do personally prefer games that have stamina bars that make you think while you're playing, and Dark Alliance could have been one of these games, but they failed to implement it correctly, especially when concerned with the AI. Now, when you do get the fights where the AI does seem to be working well and you're dropping combos on them, it felt fine, and I dare say that it even felt fun at times. Destroying a goblin, then shooting over to the next one, turning around and doing a move that gives you some AoE potential. This is what hack and slash games are all about. But unfortunately, more often than not, the AI was doing something stupid, and players like myself really noticed this stuff. If this game was being played by a really young audience, like we're talking like elementary school age, maybe nobody would care, but this game is a D&D game based on the Companions of the Hall, so it's bringing in kind of a mature audience into it, even those that don't necessarily like hack and slash games, that are big fans of Dungeons & Dragons or have read the Legend of Drizzt books. they're coming into this game and looking at it because they're interested in what this company is doing with their beloved world. And those types of players are going to notice this stuff right away. And in my opinion, this game would have just been better off not going the D&D route with the beloved Companions of the Hall, and it probably wouldn't get nearly as much flack as it's getting right now, although it wouldn't sell as well either, because D&D brings with it a lot of hype, especially before the game actually launches. So overall, the combat itself can be fun, and I'll get into one thing that I really want to praise with the combat here in just a minute, but the AI was kind of a mess overall, and I'm not sure what their goal was here. Before I change the subject, I want to talk about the bosses in the game. Now, the Frost Giant bosses and their mechanics were kind of a joke on solo for Drizzt when I was playing Drizzt solo, and I'll get into game balancing after this section. But the Frost Giant bosses were very, very, very easy. Not very responsive, and very predictable, and a lot of them just did the same thing over and over again. So the final fight of a map, or one of the earlier captain type fights, once you killed one giant, you knew how to kill them all, and that was definitely a letdown for myself. But now let's talk about two bosses that I think have a ton of potential but fell a bit short, and that was the Beholder and the final boss dragon fight. So the Beholder I thought was a really cool fight that had some awesome mechanics, but unfortunately the fight bugged out quite a lot. It was a little bit janky, and it kind of ruined the experience because of that. But the Beholder fight itself I thought was a cool fight, and if everything was smooth and the game was balanced properly, it could be a fight that we talk about and that we praise in this game. And this also goes for the final boss dragon fight, which also has potential to be an amazing fight. But my god, the janky jitteriness of this fight and the strategy that me and my co-op partner decided to use against this dragon, because the dragon can one-shot you. The strategy that we used made this dragon spaz the hell out every single time. And this janky jitteriness when we were trying to move around the dragon so we didn't get one shot was really hard to kind of predict what was going to happen. And I like things when they're unpredictable, but I don't like it when you add jitteriness to it, and that makes kind of watching what's going to happen almost impossible, which brings in a lot of unlucky deaths. And if you're playing a game like Dark Souls, when you die it's oftentimes your fault or the player's fault. But in a game like Dark Alliance in its current state, I would honestly believe other players when they tell me it was the game's fault. So the Beholder fight and the dragon fight, two very important fights in the game, have a lot of potential. So this is a praise in a way, but they fell short because of the bugs, just the stupidity of the overall AI, and of course that janky jitteriness that wasn't necessarily in the entire game, but it was in a couple very important parts, like the dragon fight when the dragon was moving, needs to be fixed before I can actually put this into a positive category. And now I want to get into something that I thought really was a positive for this game, and that is all of the different character moves, and not really abilities because you only get 4 abilities and 1 ultimate, but mainly the character's moves and all the weapon combos that you can do. So each character gets about 14 moves that you unlock as you keep playing, and the problem is that I've seen with a lot of reviews is that a lot of players didn't actually get their characters far enough to experience that new set of abilities and moves that you get. In the beginning of the game, it can be a little bit frustrating, especially at like levels 1 to 5. You don't have much and you feel kind of weak, especially trying to manage your stamina. But as you level up, you start getting things that will make it a lot more interesting, and you find more ways to manage your stamina and upgrade your potions and things like that. But there was a lot of moves, especially playing as Drizzt, and I started using a good amount of them every single fight and trying to train my fingers to have the muscle memory, which is cool. Not many games make me do that, so I could remember what these moves do, use them in the situation that they should be used. Now, there were a couple moves that didn't seem to be powerful enough for me to even use, so I didn't like those because it seemed like they didn't do really much at all besides look cool. But generally speaking, as you level up, the moves were pretty cool. From what I saw with Bruenor, catti-brie, and wulfgar, they got some cool moves as well. This is a positive in my eyes, but unfortunately it doesn't work well when the AI is not up to par with all the combos and moves that you get access to. And the next thing I want to touch upon is the game's balancing. And the first thing I'll say is that the game is not designed for solo play. Although I did play most of the game as Drizzt, I had to drop the difficulty level 1 or 2 below the recommended challenge rating, which is not really something that I'm used to doing in games as a player who comes from all the Dark Souls games and games along those lines. So when you have to drop your difficulty, you get less loot, less money, making the game even more of a grind. And you can really tell when you play solo that it's not really necessarily your fault in lacking the skills. It's more so that the encounters don't feel like they're designed for one player. They feel like they're designed for a group of 3 or 4, and this really is noticeable when you play different characters such as catti-brie or bruenor, or then you play drizzt. You can tell that each character is definitely more well suited for specific bosses, but when you take away the companionship of those characters, you might be playing a character that really just is not good for a certain boss fight. So if you're going to play a solo or even in a group of 2, which I did, just make sure to take this into account. There is quick play matchmaking in this game, so you never have to play solo if you don't want to, but I know some people don't even want to do quick play, so keep this in mind. I'm going to touch upon a couple other quick topics and then we'll get into my final thoughts. So now let's talk about the game's maps. In Dark Alliance, there's 7 different missions, each of which contain 3 acts. So within each mission, you kind of expect the levels to look very similar to one another. They're all a continuation of the same quest and all take place in the same area. But when you switch to another mission, you're kind of hoping for some variation to the maps, which really doesn't come in this game. Now, when you switch from one mission to another, sometimes you'll see a big coloring change. You'll see foliage on one, while another one's more of a cavern setting. But overall, it kind of feels like they used this cavern layout and plopped different assets on it. It's not the worst, but it's definitely not as much variety as I was hoping that we would get. If they simply just allowed us to go to like 10 towns and fight in one of the goblin raids on the villages, I think it would have done wonders for this game and plopped that mission right in the center of all of the missions that we're doing. I honestly think that players might not have complained if we even had one mission that took us off of the mountain. In terms of visuals, I think the game looks really good for a $40 hack and slash game. Honestly, the game was really shiny in certain areas, and I think the shininess might have actually overpowered some of the lower quality textures that you might not notice if it wasn't so shiny. But overall, the visuals were pretty good. The cinematics looked really good. The dragon flying in the air was really cool. I can't really bash on the visuals. I think they did a good job for what this game is supposed to be, and that's not a fully priced game. It's a $40 hack and slash. In terms of the amount of content to justify $40, well, if the overall game didn't have its issues, I think there probably is enough content. So there's 21 different levels. A couple of them are real short, but some of them are kind of long too. And if you die and you have a challenge in some areas, it's going to take you even longer. So playing on solo, it took me, I don't know, maybe around 20 hours to complete the game. And in a game where you're expecting to replay the game because it's a looter game, that's probably not too bad for a $40 game. But like I said, everything else in the game has to be good enough for you to justify that, and that seems to not be the case for most people that are reviewing this game. While speaking on content in terms of the loot, it's kind of hard for me to comment on this because I'm not like a huge looter type of person. I'm typically into other genres of games, but I still kind of enjoy one playthrough or two in looter games. But it didn't seem like there was enough variety to the loot itself. It's more so that you get items and then you get the same items at a higher rarity. So I didn't see like too many new items as I leveled up, more so the same item but on a higher rarity, which was not that interesting for myself. There were some cool armor sets. The visuals on the armor was really neat, and I did enjoy leveling up some of my legendary gear. But overall, for a player who doesn't typically love looter games, I didn't really love the loot aspect of this game. It was satisfying collecting crystals and doing things along those lines, and when you finally see a piece of rare loot come out of a chest, you get a little bit of excitement, but I think it was lacking a little bit in this category. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts right now. I don't really need to touch upon the story and stuff because looter games, you don't really care about the story too much. I don't think many people do, so I'm not even going to talk about it. If you guys read the Legend of Drizzt books, you're going to recognize references to the books and things along those lines, but nobody's playing this game to get a good story. So is Dungeons & Dragons Dark Alliance worth it? The short answer I'm going to give is no, because I could never recommend you guys to spend your money on something that I feel is unfinished. And it's unfinished in aspects that are really core to a game's design, such as the AI and the technical difficulties. Now, I will say if they could fix the AI and touch up on all those technical difficulties, I honestly might recommend it to some of you guys. I would never recommend it to people that enjoy like a more serious hack and slash experience like Diablo, but people that want that casual co-op experience, I think you can get enjoyment out of this game when they address those two issues. I'm not sure if I would say it's worth $40, maybe more so $29.99. When I looked at this game, I was initially disappointed because I was hoping for a Dark Alliance 3, the isometric hack and slash, and I was also a little bit disappointed that they handled the Companions of the Hall in more of like a jokingly matter. But when I stopped thinking about that and treating it as a casual hack and slash, a cheaper casual hack and slash, I was able to stay a little bit more open-minded, and right now I just feel like it could actually meet that bar of what I'd expect for a $40 casual hack and slash, but it needs to touch up and improve those core aspects of the game, and I'm not even sure if they'll be able to do that at this point. I feel like revamping the AI might not be possible, but just keep an eye on the updates in the patches. I hope I didn't confuse you guys with this, because this was mostly a ranting video, and I hardly ever do videos like this. I usually organize and spend so much time on visuals and stuff. I just didn't feel like doing it. I didn't feel like doing it for this game. I just wanted to get out my opinion for you guys on my channel. Maybe hold off and see what they do for patches and updates, and then consider buying it. Some of you guys might enjoy it even right off the bat, but I just can't recommend it because I don't want you guys to spend your money on something that I feel is unfinished. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.